Warm greetings. Today is Sunday, July 7, 2026. This is meteorologist Ruben Garcia. In today's video, I will talk about several topics, beginning with Super Typhoon Bavi, which is currently affecting the Mariana Islands and has just moved over the island of Rota with maximum sustained winds of 180 miles per hour. In addition, I will discuss how the circulation of Super Typhoon Bavi may help strengthen the El Niño phenomenon in the Pacific, and provide an update on the latest forecast from the European model, which projects that El Niño will intensify into the strongest on record. I will then discuss how the conditions created by El Niño will lead to a period of tropical cyclone activity well above normal in the eastern Pacific, while everything remains quiet in the Atlantic thanks to wind shear moving across the Caribbean Sea as a result of El Niño. I will also talk about sea surface temperatures across the main development region in the Atlantic, which extends from the Caribbean to Africa, where they have warmed, and I will analyze whether this will lead to any change in the outlook for a below-normal Atlantic hurricane season. Let's first zoom in on the Mariana Islands using the infrared satellite image, where we can see how impressive Super Typhoon Bavi looks as it unfortunately moves over the island of Rota with maximum sustained winds of 180 miles per hour. In other words, it is currently the strongest cyclone that has formed anywhere on the planet this year. Unfortunately, Typhoon Bavi is expected to cause significant damage across the Mariana Islands, and we wish everyone there a speedy recovery. Now, the circulation of Typhoon Bavi is so extensive that it also has indirect effects that can strengthen the El Niño phenomenon in the Pacific. This is mainly because the winds associated with the typhoon circulation create stronger than normal westerly wind anomalies extending toward the central Pacific and therefore favor the movement of warm water along the equator from the western Pacific into the central and eastern Pacific. This will cause El Niño to continue strengthening because, as Typhoon Bavi moves through this region, the westerly wind anomalies will continue pushing warm water toward the Niño 3.4 region. This will reinforce the pattern we have observed of warm waters continuing to rise to the surface across the central and eastern Pacific. In other words, this will favor the continued strengthening of El Niño, which currently exhibits the highest anomaly we have ever recorded for this time of year. Unfortunately, El Niño usually strengthens during the fall. This means it is very likely that El Niño will continue strengthening over the coming months, and we are already seeing this in the latest model runs. For example, the European model, which updated today, now forecasts temperature anomalies between 3 and 4 degrees Celsius above normal in the Niño 3.4 region. In this forecast, the model projects that by November and December it is possible that the strongest El Niño ever recorded will develop. As I have mentioned over the past several weeks, this will have a significant impact on the climate across Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean, and northern South America, where below-normal rainfall anomalies, a higher probability of heat waves, and a below-normal Atlantic hurricane season are expected. The El Niño phenomenon can not only be seen in ocean temperature anomalies, but the atmosphere is already responding to these conditions, and, for example, the Madden-Julian oscillation is currently in a phase that favors rainfall activity and low-pressure systems across the Pacific. This is one of the reasons why we have seen the strengthening of the powerful Typhoon Bavi. And as you can see, the models project that, at least over the next 45 days, atmospheric conditions will continue to favor tropical cyclone activity across the central and eastern Pacific, while the opposite is expected in the Atlantic, where atmospheric conditions should continue producing an environment that is unfavorable for tropical cyclone development. According to the latest projections, such as the European model ensemble, during the next 10 days the development of 1 or 2 cyclones is expected in the eastern Pacific, although for now they appear likely to remain on a track well away from Mexico and Central America. In contrast, notice that over the Atlantic, the European model ensemble shows no tropical cyclone development during the next 10 days. Now, I also wanted to mention that the main development region in the Atlantic, which extends from Africa to the Caribbean, has experienced warming in sea surface temperatures. And I would like to discuss whether this could represent any change in the tropical cyclone activity we expect in the Atlantic. In this graph, you can see in blue how sea surface temperatures have varied on average across this region. Since the beginning of July, we have seen significant warming, and it is something we will be monitoring over the coming weeks. I also wanted to mention that although we currently have a great deal of Saharan dust across the tropical Atlantic and the Caribbean Sea, which is completely normal because Saharan dust typically reaches its peak between July and August, unlike what we might expect this year, Saharan dust concentrations overall have remained below normal. I believe the question many people will have is, if temperatures have been warming since the beginning of July and Saharan dust has remained below normal between the Caribbean and Africa, why has tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic remained low so far? And why do the forecasts continue to project a less active than normal season? Clearly, this is because we have El Niño in the Pacific, which will continue strengthening and therefore generating strong wind shear across the Caribbean Sea and the Atlantic, creating conditions that are unfavorable for tropical cyclone activity in the Atlantic. In fact, during the past several weeks we have continued to observe above normal wind shear anomalies across the Caribbean Sea. This is one of the main reasons why we have not seen cyclone development in the region. We see the same thing when we analyze the graph of wind shear anomalies across the Caribbean Sea, or basically, from mid-May until now, they have remained above normal. Before I go, I wanted to take this opportunity to mention that the fact that we have El Niño does not mean that we will not see the formation of tropical storms or hurricanes in the Atlantic. What it does mean is that activity is very likely to remain below normal. However, it is important that we all stay prepared because a single hurricane can cause damage across the Caribbean, Central America, Mexico, or the United States. Here at Hurricane Info, I will continue monitoring the tropics closely, particularly over the coming weeks, to keep an eye on what happens across the Eastern Pacific, which should become more active by mid-July. And of course, I will also be watching the Atlantic in case any area of potential tropical cyclone development emerges. However, for now, it appears that the next 10 days will be very quiet. Well, that's all for today's video. Before I go, if you enjoy this content, I invite you to give it a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. I hope everyone has an excellent start to the week. See you next time.